Hello, this is Kylie with Fem and Flow. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Today's episode is going to be one of those foundational resets that not only shifts how you think, but how you move through your life, your body, and your reality. If you listened to last week's episode, we explored the mechanics of blame, projection, and thought forms, and how they keep us looping in distortion without even realizing it. We talked about how the false 40 grid thrives on polarity, villain making, and moral superiority. How even our most righteous reactions can actually anchor us deeper into the very distortion we're trying to escape. And how thought forms aren't just concepts, they're energetic parasites that hijack our nervous systems and distort our perception. But today, I want to go even deeper. This episode is about the next level of integration. It's not just about recognizing distortion anymore. It's about what happens when we've cleared enough to stop defending and start designing. What shifts when we realize we no longer need to protect our energy through force because we've become the architect of our field. And this is the shift from defense to design, from hypervigilance to coherence, from spiritual survival to embodied authorship. And if you've been feeling the call to soften, to stabilize, to spiral into your true tone, this episode is for you. Let's begin with the concept that you have to constantly protect your energy. In white hole mechanics, this concept becomes a myth. Now, don't get me wrong, there are seasons in the awakening process when energetic protection is absolutely necessary, especially when you're detoxing from environments that were heavy, manipulative, or traumatic. In those moments, bubble shields and field prayers and cord cutting rituals are powerful and valid. I even did previous episodes on how to protect your energy and did some different guided activations around this. And now I see those were bridge phase teachings. This can be helpful at certain times, but that's not where we're meant to live. And this is why I keep saying that understanding the three paradigm lenses, bridge to white hole transition, and white hole, is so important. It helps us do what's truly right for us based in the phase we're in. In white hole embodiment, we spiral up from this teaching and realize that's not where we're meant to stay. And also, I want to clarify something here because I've just noticed myself going back and forth and calling these things the same things. When it comes to the three different paradigm lenses, that is black hole, bridge, reality, and white hole. But sometimes I've been calling the three different paradigm lenses bridge, bridge to white hole transition, and white hole. That's not a mistake. That is more through the lens of this podcast only. On my recent episodes, I've been labeling the episodes either bridge to white hole transition, or white hole embodiment. And that reflects the paradigm of that teaching in the podcast episode. But I just wanted to clarify this in case it was confusing because I call the three paradigm lenses two different things. But one is just the overall, and that's black hole, bridge, white hole. And then when I add in bridge to white hole transition, that's just because we're viewing it a little closer up through the lens of this podcast. Does that make sense? But anyways, that's a little tangent. I wanted to explain that because I noticed I was calling the three different paradigms two different things that are similar but slightly different. But back to the episode. So, if you stay in a state of constant energetic defense, you end up in a kind of spiritual hypervigilance. You start watching every thought, monitoring every interaction, and bracing for every potential intrusion. And eventually, that becomes its own form of distortion because your aura isn't meant to be a wall, it's meant to be a filter. a living, breathing, intelligent filter that lets life in, but only the parts of life that match your tone. When your field is harmonized, when you're anchored in your true tone, you don't have to keep shielding yourself from everything. You just are. And your frequency does the filtering for you. And when I say true tone, I mean your true divine blueprint. The version of you that aligns with this higher dimensional energy scaffolding and your morphogenic blueprints without any distortion at all. It's just that pure high vibrational energy coming down through the dimensional scaffolding that I talk about. And that's what I call your true tone. Here's how that actually works. When your tone is coherent, your field naturally repels anything that doesn't resonate. You're not a vibrational match for distortion anymore, so it can't hook in. There's no unresolved emotion or frequency pattern for it to cling to. Your aura becomes like clear water, and any muddy energy simply slides off or dissolves without drama. You don't have to try to keep things out. You just remain tuned to a higher station. It's like being dialed into 99.9 FM and distortion is on 88.5 AM. It might still exist, but it's no longer accessible through your channel. And that's filtering by resonance, not effort. In earlier phases of awakening, you're still energetically permeable. So being around lower frequencies can pull your field down. That's because your tone hasn't stabilized yet. But once your field becomes coherent, it forms a dominant carrier wave, stronger, clearer, and self-reinforcing. Instead of being pulled into distortion, you filter it out. And you're not just at a higher frequency, you've become the stronger signal. And that's resonance, not resistance, and that is what changes everything. In a previous episode on how to protect your energy, I talked about how in quantum mechanics and bioenergetics, everything emits a vibrational field or waveform. And these waves interact through one, resonance. When two frequencies match or harmonize, they reinforce each other. And number two, entrainment. When two systems of different frequencies interact, one will shift to match the other, and typically the lower frequency pulls the higher one down, unless the higher frequency has a stronger carrier wave, or aka signal strength, coherence, amplitude, or alignment. When your field is fragmented or inconsistent, for example in early awakening or the ungrounded bridge phase, you are more susceptible to entrainment. Your frequency can be pulled down by distortion. But when you're anchored in white hole coherence, your frequency isn't just higher, it's more stable, harmonized, and self-sustaining. And this creates a dominant waveform that no longer gets entrained downward. Instead of lowering to meet distortion, your field filters out what doesn't match. This is similar to how in electronics or EM signal transmission, strong coherent waves pass through noise while weak signals degrade. This level of filtering wasn't always available to us. Until recently, the collective grid was still stabilizing. But we're now in a new band of frequency, what I like to call the white hole range, where coherence can hold. Not everyone is here yet, and that's okay. But if you're feeling the shift, if your body no longer resonates with old protection patterns, you might be ready to stop shielding and start designing. And if so, this episode is absolutely for you. Now I want to move into a personal story tied to the concept of this episode of going from defense to design and show how this may play out in reality. So I've been in my luteal phase, and some of you may know where I'm going with this, but earlier in the week, I was feeling really emotional, heavy, and like my hormones were in control. I felt incredibly tired and kind of out of it. I got a bad migraine, and I started questioning everything. my progress, my weight, my energy. It felt like nothing was working. I didn't feel good, and it was certainly worse than normal when it comes to this phase. I'm usually fine, but this had me thinking, who am I? Why am I feeling this way? But what I see now is that my field was still coherent, my tone was intact. It was my body, specifically my hormonal system, surfacing old emotional imprints so they could be released. These weren't setbacks, they were echoes of a former version of me, the one who used to associate her cycle with bloating, regression, insatiable appetite. The one who thought emotional days meant something was wrong. But now I can see that it was just distortion residue being flushed because my system was finally clear and safe enough to release it. And this is what I mean when I say in the white hole paradigm, frequency is the filter. In the white hole paradigm, you don't have to fix your hormones. You don't have to micromanage your body. You just hold your tone and everything else reorganizes. The weird emotions I felt wasn't failure, it was a mirror, and when I held that mirror with love, it dissolved. And just a side note, when I say you don't have to fix your hormones, I mean on a general energetic level. If you have a genuine medical concern, then of course get the support you need. What I'm talking about here is white hole stabilization, and that's not instant. It's a spiral, a beautiful process of unwinding, softening, and stabilizing in a new coherence. So, here's something deeper to get into. As women, we've inherited centuries of distortion around our bodies, especially our cycles. We've been taught that menstruation is shameful, gross, or a burden. We were told not to speak of it, not to show discomfort, to push through and hide it. But in truth, our cycle is a sacred intelligence. It mirrors the moon, literally. Many women, when intuitively attuned, follow either a red moon or a white moon cycle. If you bleed on or near the full moon, you're in a red moon cycle. If you bleed on or near the new moon, you're in a white moon cycle. These are ancient symbolic frameworks that link a woman's menstrual cycle with the phases of the moon. These archetypes don't imply one is better than the other. They represent different energetic roles, purposes, and invitations. A red moon cycle often reflects women whose energy is directed outward toward the world rather than solely toward childbearing. This is associated with spiritual teachers, healers, creatives, and leaders who are here to channel energy into the collective. This was sometimes called the shaman's moon because bleeding on the full moon meant you were inverting the collective rhythm, often to walk a path of guidance, transformation, or sacred rebellion. The key message here is your cycle is tuned to transform. You are purging not just for yourself, but for others. A white moon cycle often reflects a more inward focused, fertile, and restorative rhythm. It is often associated with women in childbearing phases, homemaking energy, or deep inner renewal. It aligns with the archetype of retreat, introspective, and physical or emotional fertility. And the key message here is your cycle is tuned to renewal. You are harmonizing deeply with the earth womb energy. Neither cycle is better. They simply reflect your current phase of purpose and energetic expression. When you're in white hole alignment, your cycle becomes a sacred synchronizer, mirroring not just the moon, but your internal spiral. Red moon bleeds can signal a time of collective energetic clearing. White moon bleeds may mirror a personal rebirth or recalibration. And these aren't just poetic, they're energetic archetypes of introspection, release, and renewal. Our luteal phase is a natural time of reflection. Our menstrual bleed is a built in purge, a detox, a reset. The sadness, irritation, or heaviness that comes during this phase isn't weakness, It's the magnification of what we're ready to release. It's our body giving us a mirror, amplified by the moon, to ask what needs to go, what no longer matches my field, what version of me is dying so the next one can be born. We need to reclaim the cycle as sacred. Just as we're learning to see the full moon not as a time when people act crazy, but as a mirror that reveals what's ready to change, we can begin to see our menstrual cycle the same way. A moment of powerful release, a portal of realignment, a physical spiral of the spiritual purge we often ask for. Our hormones are not working against us. They are reminding us. Our bodies are wise, and when we stop treating them as obstacles and start listening to the cycles as guides, we become more whole. We stop fighting and we start receiving. And of course, there's a nuance here. Honoring the sacredness of our cycle doesn't mean bypassing responsibility or using hormones as a pass for unchecked behavior. Emotional intensity is real, but white hole embodiment asks us to feel it consciously, to witness what's surfacing without projecting it onto others. It's not about repressing emotion, but also not about indulging distortion in the name of being in your cycle. Our hormones may magnify what needs attention, but it's still our responsibility to meet those revelations with grace, discernment, and self awareness. And this is an example of what it means to become the architect again. So, another side note, I want to really be clear about something. When I talk about frequency or white hole embodiment, this isn't about hierarchy or being above anyone. White hole embodiment is not an elitist lens. It's not about thinking you're better than people who still need shields or rituals or whatever it is. We've all needed those tools. I've needed them and I've published episodes about them. But when you stabilize in your true tone, the need for protection dissolves. Not because you've transcended others, but because you've harmonized yourself. And remember, this is all a spiral up. And this is why phase discernment is so important. What supports one version of you may constrict the next. And if we can honor that without judgment, we keep our filters clean, our hearts open, and our evolution soft. So let's swing back. Earlier, I said if you stay in a state of constant energetic defense, you end up in a kind of spiritual hypervigilance. You start watching every thought, monitoring every interaction, and bracing for every potential intrusion. And eventually, that becomes its own form of distortion. Because your aura isn't meant to be a wall, it's meant to be a filter, a living, breathing, intelligent filter that lets life in, but only the parts of life that match your tone. When your field is harmonized, when you're anchored in your true tone, you don't have to keep shielding yourself from everything. You just are. And your filter and your frequency does the filtering for you. And this is where white hole embodiment begins to change everything. Because in the black hole paradigm, we're taught that protection equals separation. Guard your energy, keep people out, be careful. But in white hole coherence, protection equals refinement. You don't push things away, you simply raise the frequency of your field so distortion falls away on its own. It can't land where it's not resonant. And you may hear these archetypes talked about. You may hear people talk about the hermit phase. And that's basically what I'm talking about here. In a certain part of your spiral, in that bridge phase area, you're stabilizing your own frequency and you're not coherent with a strong enough signal to essentially be the stronger carrier wave. So this goes along with the hermit phase. You feel called to be by yourself and be alone so you can stabilize in your own vibration and your own coherence. And then once you continue to spiral up and you stabilize in that and your waves become stronger, then you essentially move out of that part of the initiation spiral. It's really interesting because you can look at all of this through the lens of quantum physics, or you can look at it through a story archetypal level. So it's really, really interesting to see them from these two different lenses. And that brings us to the point of this episode. In White Hole Coherence, you are the architect. You're not just reacting to your environment, you're not just cleaning up after energetic messes, you're designing the field. Every thought you hold, every image you choose, every space you create, every voice you let in, it all becomes part of the architecture. And just like you curate your home or your wardrobe or your altar, you get to curate your inner world, your mental space, your emotional atmosphere, your vibrational blueprint. And the more intentional you are with that architecture, the less you have to micromanage your field because clarity becomes your filter. Not force, not fear, not vigilance, just clarity. Now let's talk about how you do that, how you move from defense to design. Here are a few practices that support this shift. Number one, curate your inputs. Start paying close attention to what you consume media, music, conversations, even your own inner monologue. Do they match the frequency you want to hold, or are they creating static in your field? And if you're not sure, here's a powerful practice. Go on a frequency detox. Pull back from lower or mid vibe inputs completely, especially music, shows, and social content that you used to enjoy, but now might carry a dissonant undertone. Give your field space to recalibrate without constant energetic interference. Static can feel like mild irritation, emotional heaviness, background tension, or even just feeling subtly off after consuming something. I recently re listened to music I used to love and was completely repulsed by it. Well, okay, repulsed is a strong word. It just did not feel aligned. It was pretty funny, and I thought, oh my, that was different version of me for sure. But that's the gift of recalibration. It makes distortion very obvious. And from that clarity, you can begin to reintroduce content that actually reinforces your tone rather than diluting it. And then on the flip side, notice what lights you up. For me, I've recently been watching this YouTube channel called Homeworthy, and people give tours of their home and talk about their design philosophy. I have felt so inspired by it. And that is resonance, that is coherence. And just let your body track what feels beautiful and inspiring to you, not just what feels familiar. And number two, listen to your body when you're invited into something. Opportunities, requests, relationships. Notice whether they create expansion or contraction. And this is architectural data. The body doesn't lie. If you're not used to listening to your body, start small. Notice how you feel before and after certain interactions. Do you feel heavier or lighter? Energized or drained? Calm or tense? Inspired or contracted? Your body speaks in sensation. Tightness, nausea, warmth, buzz, openness. And that's your inner compass. You can also try placing your hand on your gut or your heart and asking, do I actually want this? And don't rush the answer. Wait for your body's response. It might come as a feeling, a pull, a softness, or even a subtle no you can't explain. The more you listen, the louder your intuition gets. And trust is built through practice, not perfection. And when I say listen to your body when you're invited into something, if you're around people and you feel dissonance, don't just immediately write it off and think, oh, they're not my vibe, or assume that you're vibrating higher or something like that. Be self aware and really ask yourself, okay, am I projecting something onto them? And same thing, if you get into a disagreement with someone or they just don't like you, also ask, are they projecting something onto you? We need to be open about this and self aware and truly reflect. So, if you feel dissonance with a group of people or someone, don't just write it off and think, okay, we're on different vibes. I mean, that might be part of it, but we want to be more well rounded about this. Just also make sure you're not projecting something else onto someone else because I talk about this, but people can be mirrors. Maybe something we don't like about ourselves is reflecting back, but just understand this whole big picture and the nuance of it all. Number three, design your physical space to mirror your energetic space. Your home, your desk, your closet, these are all energetic containers. Beautify them, simplify them, let them become resonant structures that remind you of who you are. The space around you holds frequency. It either anchors your tone or subtly distorts it. When your environment feels misaligned, it creates background static in your field. You may feel unmotivated, disoriented, or disconnected from your vision, even if you can't quite articulate why. I've noticed this in my own life. There's a lot I want to do to my home, or maybe even build a new one someday. And while my house is very functional and there's so many beautiful aspects about it, it doesn't feel like a true extension of me. And that's probably because I am very, very specific and I love interior design. It just doesn't mirror the clarity or beauty I feel internally or that I know my soul is aligned with. And compare that to how I feel when I look at the mood board for my closet renovation that I want to do or my dream home. When I look at that, I feel so inspired, calm, excited, aligned, and creatively activated. Those spaces that I'm dreaming about, mood boards and Pinterest boards, that space reflects my true tone. And I want to add something here because sometimes I can get stuck in an all or nothing perfectionist spiral where if I can't do something exactly how I envision it, it feels like a waste and I don't want to do it at all. Or I just don't feel excited about it, so I don't make decisions or move forward. Like I get frustrated when I can't make my physical outer environment match my inner world and my inner vision due to some sort of constraint. But lately, I've started moving through that. I've allowed myself to make small changes, even if they're not the final version or my big dream. And even those small changes have made a big impact. Frequency responds to intention. A single aligned change can shift the whole atmosphere. When your physical space is aligned, it becomes a mood board for your field. It speaks back to you. It stabilizes your frequency even on the days you feel off. It reminds you who you are without words. And that's why the spaces we live in, especially sacred spaces like closets, bedrooms, or studios, matter so much more than we've been taught. They are architectural mirrors for embodiment. Number four, set field intentions. Instead of shielding, try programming. Let only what supports my coherence enter this field. You are not guarding a fortress, you are tuning a frequency. Your field responds to instruction far more than it responds to fear. When you speak clear, resonant intentions, you give your field a template to stabilize around. This isn't about controlling your reality, it's about designing the tone you want it to filter for. Think of it like setting the aperture on a camera. You're not controlling what's out there, you're refining what comes into focus. This kind of energetic programming can be simple but powerful. You might start your day by saying, let my field reflect clarity and peace. I am open only to what uplifts and harmonizes me. All distortions dissolve in the light of my tone. These phases don't just sound pretty, they restructure your filter. They act like tuning forks for your aura. They calibrate your coherence so that distortion bounces off, not because you're armored, but because you're too resonant for it to land. And over time, this becomes second nature. Your field starts to hold these programs passively, just like your body holds posture or breath patterns without conscious effort. The more you speak intention, the more it becomes your default signal. Then, number 5, clear old clutter and install truth. When you catch a thought form that doesn't belong, don't just eject it. Replace it with something beautiful, something stable, something true. Energetic clarity isn't just about removal, it's about replacement. When you release a distortion or a thought form, you create a vacuum in your field. And if you don't consciously fill that space with something coherent, the old pattern can sneak back in. This is why just letting go isn't enough. You have to install a new architecture. Think of it like home renovation. You don't just knock down walls and walk away. You rebuild with intention. You decide what stays, what goes, and what serves the design you're building now. When you catch a thought like, I'm falling behind, replace it with, I'm on perfect time. My rhythm is sacred. When you hear, I'm too much, replace it and install, my depth is divine. I bring clarity to every space I enter. These new thoughts are not just affirmations, they're structural codes. They create grooves in your field that repattern your emotional responses, your nervous system, and eventually your entire perception of reality. You are the interior designer of your inner world. Clear the clutter, but don't stop there. Add beauty, add truth, and make it feel like home. Now I want to get into another layer of this shift from defense to design, and that's the body. Because even when we mentally understand that our field can filter, even when we've emotionally softened into authorship, the body often still holds onto the oldest pattern of all, bracing. Your body braces because it's trying to protect you. It learned to do that in the black hole system where threats feel constant. The nervous system is hypervigilant and survival always seems just out of reach. In the black hole framework, your nervous system is constantly scanning the environment for danger. Even when you think you're calm, your body may still be running old safety protocols. Clenched jaw, tensed hips, raised shoulders, shallow breath. These aren't random, they are somatic armor. You can't filter by resonance if your fascia is still bracing for attack. The nervous system and fascia need to feel the new architecture too. They need to feel the safety of your coherence. And this is why fascia release, somatic breath work, or even gentle hand on heart presence is part of field design. It's not just spiritual, it's structural. And the wild part is, most of us don't even realize how unsafe we felt for most of our lives. Even if you've had a good childhood on paper, your soul wasn't built for this distorted, compressed, inverted system. The very architecture of the black hole grid feels wrong to the soul. It's too noisy, too harsh, too dense. Especially for sensitive, intuitive souls. Those of us who came here to see the distortion, feel it fully, and help transmute it. We didn't incarnate to fit into the system. We came to help rewrite it. So then add trauma, grief, rejection, suppression, or just the stress of living in a chronically dysregulated society. And of course, your body adapted. Of course, your nervous system got stuck in fight or flight because it was trying to protect you. But here's what happens when that state becomes chronic. 1, your cortisol stays elevated. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. When it stays high for too long, it dysregulates your blood sugar, increases inflammation, and disrupts your sleep cycles. It also tells your body to store fat, especially around the belly, because it thinks you're in survival mode and might need that energy later. Number two, your digestion slows down. When your body is in fight or flight, digestion is deprioritized. Blood is diverted away from your digestive organs and toward your limbs, preparing you to run or fight. And that means food doesn't break down properly, nutrient absorption suffers, and gut motility slows. Bloating, constipation, acid reflux, and food sensitivities become more common. Not because something's wrong with your food, but because your body doesn't feel safe to digest. Number three, your hormones shift into stress preservation mode. When cortisol is high, it throws off the balance of other key hormones like progesterone, estrogen, thyroid hormones, and insulin. For women, this can lead to irregular cycles, PMS, fertility issues, and mood swings. Over time, it can also contribute to thyroid slowing and blood sugar imbalances, which make you feel tired, foggy, and heavy. Number four, your weight may increase not because you're broken, but because your body thinks it's shielding you. Fat becomes a buffer, a form of energetic armor. The body stores weight to protect your organs, regulate temperature, and hold reserves in case the perceived threat continues. It's not failure, it's a brilliant adaptive response from a body doing its best to keep you safe. And then number five, your muscles tighten to guard you and then get stuck like that, sending constant feedback to your brain that says, we're not safe yet. And this creates a looping pattern between fascia, muscle tone, and the brain. Tight muscles lock in protective patterns. Fascia becomes dense and immobile. This chronic tension reinforces the idea that danger is present, even if it's not, and your brain keeps the alarm system on. Over time, this can lead to TMJ, neck tension, lower back pain, pelvic floor tightness, and migraines, all rooted in the body bracing for something that may have already passed. So the body stays braced, even when the mind says, I'm fine, even when the field has cleared, and even when the threats are gone. And this is why doing mindset work isn't enough. This is why just thinking positive doesn't fix the loop, because the body doesn't believe you yet. And here's where white hole embodiment comes in. In the white hole system, safety becomes your baseline frequency, not because you forced your body into relaxation, but because you've attuned your field so deeply that the body finally gets the message. It's okay to soften. When your fascia releases its grip, when your breath deepens, when your hips start to open, your nervous system stops scanning for danger. The feedback loop reverses. And instead of saying, we're under threat, your body begins to say, we are safe now, you can create. And that's the moment everything changes. Your metabolism begins to shift, your hunger cues regulate, your sleep deepens, your body stops bracing and begins building. This is the somatic mirror of becoming the architect. You're no longer reacting to life. You're designing how life flows through you, not just in the mind, not just in the aura, but in the very tissue of your being. Now let's talk about how we get here, how we actually transition from a braced, guarded body to a soft, responsive, energetically intelligent one that can hold the frequency of our true tone. Because white hole embodiment doesn't happen just through mindset or intention. It happens through the body, through fascia, through somatic alignment, through architectural attunement. For me, this has looked like neuromuscular massage, stretching, Pilates, rebounding, and more. I'll talk more about this later. But what matters most isn't the modality. It's the intention behind the movement. You're not forcing change, you're creating conditions for coherence. My neuromuscular massage therapist said something really interesting the other day. She was working on a gritty spot in my fascia and explained when you massage a tight muscle or stuck fascia, it sends a signal to the brain, hey, this area is tense. The brain then responds by releasing a chemical and neurological cascade to relax and recalibrate that area. She had me feel it before and after, and the difference was undeniable. It had softened, and it wasn't just less tight. That gritty area that I had just felt before was totally gone, and the signal loop had reversed. And it was really fast. That's what fascial work does when done with presence. It teaches the brain and body a new pattern. It updates the field. So, what should fascia actually feel like? It should feel silky, responsive, fluid, not dense or crunchy or brittle, not numb or armored. Think of how little kids can roll down a hill, bounce up, and feel amazing. Their fascia is hydrated, healthy, and alive. They're not carrying years of bracing and density. Most adults, on the other hand, would feel sore for days after doing that. But it's not just because they're older, it's because their fascia has become rigid. And that soreness, in the black hole paradigm, if we are sore after a workout, we see it as a sign of progress, no pain, no gain. And if we're sore after doing something we used to do with ease, we assume it's a sign that we're aging or deteriorating. But in the white hole paradigm, we began to understand soreness isn't always about muscle micro tears, muscle building, or physical exertion. Sometimes it's the body releasing stored emotion, distortion, and trauma. White hole soreness often shows up not from overuse, but from purging, from recalibration, from fascia finally letting go of something it's held for years. That hip pain, it might not be your hip at all. It might be grief that's been stuck in your pelvic fascia since your 20s, finally being released. This is why intentional movement matters. When you stretch, breathe, or even place your hand on your body with presence, you're saying, I'm safe now, you can release. And once the fascia softens, something magical happens. It begins conducting higher dimensional energy. This is what we talked about with six-dimensional architecture. The fascia becomes a grid system for light, a conductive web for your soul's true tone to move through you. Once it's hydrated, untangled, and online, it doesn't just hold your form, it reflects your blueprint. This is what sacred movement looks like in the white hole paradigm. It's not about punishment, it's not about metrics, it's about becoming a living geometry. This is why in the past episodes I talked about the body being built in sacred geometric portions. Our fascia holds that grid. It can either collapse under distortion or begin to anchor in six-dimensional energy as it realigns. In previous episodes, I talked about how the sixth dimension is the realm of sacred geometry and morphogenic fields that give energy shape. There is an ideal version of our body that aligns with these templates, a kind of divine architecture encoded into our form. This is what I mean when I say our blueprints. We see this divine architecture reflected in the golden ratio, which shows up in nature, spiral galaxies, seashells, and even in ideal facial and bodily proportions. We are innately drawn to bodies, faces, art, and environments that reflect the golden ratio because our biology, soul memory, and energetic blueprint recognize coherence when we see it. It's not just cultural conditioning, it's energetic resonance. So, why do we find things that align with the golden ratio beautiful? When something aligns with the golden ratio, our nervous system relaxes. Why? Because it reflects universal order. It reflects God's divine design. Our eyes and body recognize it as true, coherent, and harmonious. It's not just aesthetic, it's biological entrainment with the geometry of creation. This is why we often find certain faces or bodies beautiful, even if we can't explain why. It's not about perfection by current standards, it's about resonance. Your true tone body isn't striving to be perfect by black hole ideals, which are rooted in comparison, distortion, and artificial symmetry. It's aligning with its blueprint of coherence, the geometry your soul came encoded with. And the wild thing is, this is the kind of beauty we naturally find perfect. Not forced, not filtered, but harmonic. When a body reflects sacred geometry, when it moves in spirals, radiates balance, and glows with inner coherence, we recognize it as beautiful because our souls remember that shape. That's what your true tone body is. Not idealized by the world, idealized by creation. Geometric, energetic, alive. And in the body, the golden ratio or pi appears in things like the ratio between the forearm and the hand, the spacing of the navel in relation to the height of the body, the facial features when they're most symmetrical or naturally proportional, and even the way DNA spirals, which follow a logarithmic spiral related to pi. When your fascia softens, your posture realigns, and your energy field becomes coherent, your body begins to reorganize towards these harmonic proportions. Not because you're forcing it, but because that's the shape of your soul's original design. In the sixth dimension, we also find morphogenic fields, the invisible energetic structures that shape form and function. Your body has a morphogenic field for health, harmony, and your unique soul design. When distortion is cleared and fascia becomes a conductive medium, your body begins to realign with that field. This is when your skin starts glowing, your eyes become brighter, your muscles organize more symmetrically, your energy moves in spirals instead of tension patterns. You become more recognizably you. You're not chasing a societal idea, you're revealing a sacred template. Earlier, I mentioned that fascia is essentially the light web that anchors in our blueprint, our sixth dimensional morphogenic field. It's the electrical conduit for higher dimensional energy. When your fascia is compressed, frozen, or dehydrated, it blocks the flow of sixth dimensional current. It stores emotional memory and trauma as spatial distortion, meaning your tissues literally hold the shape of past pain. You become patterned by your past instead of your potential. It also holds you in old energetic loops, which means your body keeps reenacting the same frequencies over and over, preventing you from fully embodying new states, no matter how much mindset work you do. But when you move in spiralized, breath-based patterns, you rehydrate and awaken fascia. You pull six-dimensional light into the body, begin aligning with your true blueprint, and dissolve protective bracing that cannot coexist with harmonic geometry. And once you start stabilizing in white hole coherence, that soreness you feel isn't a setback, it's resonance. Your fascia is releasing distortion as it's replaced with order. You're not just sore, you're reorganizing at the structural and energetic level. In the white hole paradigm, soreness is a sign that sixth dimensional frequency is entering your body. Your fascia is waking up, distortion is being metabolized, sacred geometry is being installed. In an earlier episode, I talked about the sacred geometry of the body, how specific technical or geometric movements allow more sixth dimensional energy to anchor into the field. Back then, I said it's not just about calories or muscle build. But here's what I see even more clearly now. These movements refine the fascia. They activate morphogenic alignment, and that has a spiral up effect. The more you move in geometric precision, the more you magnetize your sacred blueprint into form. Your fascia starts to reorganize, your posture begins to harmonize, and your body starts to reflect more and more of your true tone geometry, even visually in proportions that echo the golden ratio. And in that past episode, I mentioned examples like golf, tennis, Pilates, weightlifting, skiing, all of which involve coordination, rhythm, precision, and spiraling torque. These aren't just workouts, they're anchoring mechanisms for multidimensional energy. And like I said in many recent episodes, the more we spiral up, the more we revisit familiar topics from a new octave of clarity. And this is one of those moments, because now I see it even more clearly. Fitness and movement must be approached differently depending on the paradigm you're in. In the black hole model, it's all about force, willpower, burn, max effort. The goal is output, domination, aesthetic control. But in this paradigm, we end up doing more harm than good. We push our fascia into chronic bracing until it either goes numb or breaks. We override intuitive cues. We punish the body like it's a machine. And even if the outside looks good, the field stays distorted. In the bridge phase, we begin to awaken. We might start lifting lighter, tuning into our breath, choosing better inputs. But if the nervous system is still dysregulated, we might still be unknowingly reinforcing tension patterns in the fascia. If this is the case, the fascia locks down instead of spiraling, which blocks six-dimensional energy from integrating. The energy tries to enter, but there's no space to hold it, so it gets redirected into tension or inflammation. Even well-intended movement can signal threat to a body that hasn't yet learned how to feel safe. And this was my story for a while. Over the past few years, I gained weight, even though I felt like I was doing all the quote unquote right things. I was eating pretty clean, exercising often, but I was pushing through boot camps, doing too much cardio, lifting too heavy. I thought I was being disciplined, but I was really sending my body the message, we're still in danger. My fascia never had time to soften. It stayed locked in defense mode, and so my field stayed stuck. I felt like I could never stretch enough. No matter what I did, the tension lingered. And when I talked to different massage therapists or movement professionals, I kept getting conflicting advice. You need to do this specific strength exercise. You need more Pilates. You just need to stretch more. You need to fix your posture. And honestly, it felt overwhelming. Like there wasn't enough time in the week to do all the things people were telling me I should do. And I remember thinking, I already work out consistently. Now I need to do more just to feel okay. I've seen a lot of different people throughout this whole journey, and I weightlift and I stretch and I do all these things I thought were good. And then I would still have people say very specific things. I remember one person doing this massage and trying to release my inner thigh. And she literally laughed and said, "Do you ever stretch?" It's like, "Yeah, I do." Like, what? And it was frustrating. And I was hearing stuff like that a lot. And it wasn't until I shifted from doing more to doing differently that things started to change. And it wasn't about intensity, it was about attunement. And that's the key. In the white hole paradigm, we stop exercising to survive or prove. We move to spiral light through the body. Fitness becomes play, recalibration, expression. Movement isn't something we do to our body, it becomes something the body asks for in order to broadcast tone. Because it's no longer trying to survive, it's trying to sing. And this is how we shift from defense to design, from bracing to broadcasting, from being a container of tension to becoming a conduit for light. Your fascia is not just tissue, it's your field made visible. So let it speak, let it spiral, let it soften into its true form. And I talked about my journey a little bit, but for me right now, that looks pretty simple. I walk often. I have started doing mat Pilates. I do gentle stretching and then I do some rebounding. But I want to be honest about the phase before this because it was just as important. So I talked about years ago when I was doing too much cardio, I was constantly telling my body that it's not safe and just in this pattern of my body bracing and being very tense. And then I was getting so many massages, deep tissue mainly at that point, and it was not working. I was still feeling so tense. So before I got to this point where I'm at, and before I added this movement back in, I actually took a break from everything except walking. I stopped strength training completely. I focused on neuromuscular massage, fascia release, and sending one message to my body over and over again: you are safe now. And that was the beginning of the recalibration. And now I started to gently reintroduce movement, Pilates, spiraling stretches, bouncing on the rebounder, and I can already feel the difference. My body isn't resisting it, it is responding. And something really interesting happened about a month ago. My hunger cues completely changed. I stopped getting those old hunger pangs, the stomach grumbles, the urgent crashy feelings, and fasting suddenly became easy. I don't feel irritable or weak when I don't eat for a while. I actually like it. But just a little nuance, I don't mean days. I mean fasting until dinner, or if I feel true hunger, maybe earlier, like 3 p.m. I am listening to my body more. I'm listening to my body. I'm not forcing it. Because now, when I fast, I can feel my body clearing, resetting, rebalancing my blood sugar, letting inflammation subside, and triggering gentle autophagy and cellular renewal. And autophagy is your body's natural cellular cleanup and renewal process, and it gets powerfully activated by fasting. When you fast, your body stops focusing on digesting food and starts using that energy to break down old, damaged, or unnecessary cell parts, recycle cellular debris into usable building blocks, clean up inflammation, bacteria, and rogue proteins, and stimulate the growth of new, fresh, high functioning cells. It's basically your body's self repair system. Autophagy begins gently after 12 to 14 hours of fasting, and then it's strongly activated after 16 plus hours. Your body enters what's often called metabolic healing mode during this time, and it's different from just burning fat. You're literally regenerating from the inside out. And in white hole coherence, autophagy isn't just cleanup, it's a purification spiral. It's when your body says, let me burn away what no longer matches your tone. Let me dissolve the distortion. Let me rebuild in the image of who you truly are. That's why you often feel clearer, brighter, and more sculpted after a good fasting cycle. It's not just weight loss, it's energetic architecture clearing out the noise. Shortly, I'll talk more about fasting in the different paradigms. But for me, I am noticing that this whole shift, this soft reset, isn't happening because I'm forcing anything. It's happening because I'm finally aligned. I'm aligned with the right kind of movement, with intermittent fasting that feels natural, with minerals that support my fascia and nervous system, and with massages that tell my body the war is over. And like I said, this is still early. I'll share more as it continues to unfold. But like I talked about before, I really see this podcast as me sharing as I go and giving insight into my own spiral because I'm sure other people are right there with me. But for now, I can tell something has already changed, and not just in my body, but in my field. So, I want to quickly talk about hunger and fasting in the different paradigms. So, let's talk about why we feel hunger and what changes across the different paradigms. So, first off, a lot of what we call hunger isn't. It's microbial craving, it's nutrient confusion, it's emotional exhaustion that's trying to ground itself through food. It's inflammation scrambling the signal. So, like I mentioned, my own hunger cues changed about a month ago, and I felt really called to fast until dinner. And at the time, I thought this would be hard or be challenging because in the past, I've done intermittent fasting, and by 11, I would be so hungry and watching the clock so I could eat lunch at the first moment I could. So that's kind of what I had in mind that would happen, and I thought it would be hard to do. But actually, it wasn't. I literally would get to dinner and be totally neutral. I wasn't starving, I wasn't trying to order an appetizer so quick or snacking at the first moment I could. I was totally neutral and totally fine. And then I also started noticing subtle moments where I'd wonder if I was hungry, but when I stepped back and tuned in, I realized my stomach wasn't actually hungry. It wasn't grumbling or empty. I was just energetically depleted. And it's this tired, static feeling, not a hunger for food, but a hunger for stillness, a moment to breathe, to ground, to recalibrate. If I eat in that state, it never satisfies me. But if I pause, breathe, or lay down for 5 minutes, the feeling disappears and I feel clear again. I think many of us may confuse static with hunger, and then we eat to fix an energy glitch, but what we really need is to reconnect to ourselves. And if you think about this intuitively, for me, that feeling is tired and this energetic static, like I mentioned. I think we mistake that for hunger because that staticky feeling makes us feel ungrounded and we feel like tired, up in the air, ungrounded. So we reach for something dense and comforting like food to add density to our body and pull ourselves back down. And we think that'll ground us, but it doesn't. So that's how I intuitively think about that. And also, just in the name of transparency, about directly a month ago, I was doing a few days where I would fast until dinner, but I have not done that this whole time. Then I went through 5 days where I would do the chroma cleanse, and I would just fast until lunchtime whenever I felt called to eat. It wasn't a set time, but I wanted to do the chroma cleanse because it was still light, but there's a ton of nutrients in it. But that's something else I did during this past month. But basically every day except one day where I truly felt hungry for breakfast, I've just fasted until some time where I felt truly hungry. I'm not sure that all of that matters, but I just wanted to add a little more insight here so it didn't sound like I was just fasting until dinner all day. Because at this phase, I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. It's truly up to your own journey, I think, and how you feel. So now I want to talk about why intuitive eating really confused me in the past. Because honestly, the whole idea of intuitive eating never fully resonated with me. And not because the concept is wrong, but because intuition depends on the paradigm you're in. In the black hole paradigm, intuition can actually be trauma loops. It's the microbiome demanding sugar, It's bracing patterns, craving emotional sedation through food. It's nervous system dysregulation masquerading as quote unquote what I feel like eating. In the white hole paradigm, intuition is clean. It's clear, it's quiet. You're not being pulled by distortion, you're listening to coherence. So, yes, now I see that intuitive eating is real, but only when you've repatterned the distortion out of your field. Otherwise, it's just unconscious momentum in a pretty outfit. Now, let's talk about why fasting doesn't work for everyone and when it shouldn't work. So, fasting is a powerful tool, like I've talked about a little bit, but only when the body is ready. If you're in chronic high cortisol, if your nervous system is in survival mode, if your fascia is braced, your minerals are depleted, and your blood sugar is erratic, then fasting can actually make everything worse. You may feel more anxious, more fatigued, more inflamed. You're not clearing, you're compounding stress. Because fasting is an amplifier, it depends whatever state you're in. If you're regulated, nourished, and safe, fasting amplifies clarity. If you're dysregulated and depleted, fasting amplifies chaos. In the white hole, fasting is a frequency practice. When your system is stabilized, fasting becomes a way to tune your field. It's not about control, it's about coherence. You feel clear, clean, light, and sovereign. You don't fast because you have to. You fast because your body wants the spaciousness. White hole fasting isn't about skipping meals. It's about choosing resonance over noise. So let's swing back to why we feel hunger. Your gut microbiome plays a huge role in your hunger cues. If your gut is overrun with sugar loving bacteria, they literally signal your brain to eat more sugar. Your cravings aren't just emotional, they're colonial. Entire microbial populations are trying to stay alive. And if your body is low in minerals, amino acids, or real fats, you can feel hungry even if you've eaten, because you're calorically full but metabolically starving. Meanwhile, processed food breaks the natural hunger satiety cycle. It hijacks dopamine, it numbs the receptors that say I'm nourished, it fills you with noise but no signal. So your body keeps asking, is anyone listening? Is anything real? Where's the actual fuel? So, black hole hunger is reactive, dysregulated, hijacked. You feel panicked, crashy, ungrounded. You eat to survive the static, not to be nourished. Cortisol, emotional depletion, and gut distortion run the show. And then when it comes to hunger in the bridge phase, you're learning to decode. You ask, is this real hunger or am I tired? Do I need food or minerals? You start experimenting with space, sensation, and honesty. And the patterns aren't fully healed, but awareness is returning. And then white hole hunger. It's soft, clean, precise. You don't feel hijacked by hunger, you feel invited. Hunger becomes a whisper, not a warning, a request, not a command. You may feel a gentle pulse of hunger, a warm spaciousness in the solar plexus, or a clear inner knowing, now is the moment to receive, to nourish my body. White hole hunger isn't just a physical cue, it's a moment of energetic receptivity. So let's talk about the paradigm split for fasting. Black hole fasting feels like a punishment. It's rooted in shame, urgency, or the desire to fix. It creates stress, bracing, and rebound patterns. You're not fasting, you're withholding. And then in the bridge phase, fasting becomes experimental. You begin to feel the difference between withholding and clearing. And some days feel regulated and others feel edgy, but the old grip is loosening. And then in the white hole, fasting becomes a frequency cleanser. You don't do it to control the body, you do it to create stillness, clarity, lightness. You fast like a clear channel, not a starving body. And when you do eat, it's pure resonance. You're not escaping food, you're meeting it from wholeness. So, here are some other things worth mentioning in my own journey because they've absolutely supported the shift. And these are the more subtle behind the scene rituals or things I'm doing. I've been using magnesium spray, taking magnesium glycinate and magnesium threonate. I've been doing parasympathetic reset rituals like putting my feet up against the wall or a headboard for 20 minutes. I've literally been telling my body, you are safe now. Thank you for protecting me. It's safe to let go. I've been honoring rest periods without guilt. I mentioned, but I've been getting neuromuscular therapy massages that target specific bracing patterns. I have been getting lymphatic drainage and acupuncture to move stuck energy. I haven't been doing this as much as the neuromuscular therapy, but I need to schedule an appointment for this. I've been focusing on hydration and trace minerals to support fascia conductivity and cellular balance. And these are the kinds of things that seem small, but they speak directly to your fascia and your field. They create the conditions for your body to stop guarding and start receiving. I know I've mentioned this before, but I want to clarify something I didn't go into fully. There was a time I was getting deep tissue massages, and then I tried myofascial release for specific areas, and later worked with a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner for acupuncture and lymphatic drainage. And actually, that's how I found my current neuromuscular therapist. The traditional Chinese medicine practitioner recommended her when I started noticing that deep pressure was no longer serving my body. Actually, I'll mention the specific story here because I think it's kind of interesting. The acupuncturist was doing acupuncture to my shoulders, and I guess they were severely reacting. And she asked me if I'm a caretaker. I was confused because I guess I'm a caretaker for my dogs and sort of my husband, but I'm not really a caretaker in that deeply stressful sense, if you know what I mean. So that threw me off. I thought, dang, I know I'm tense, but oh, that seems like a whole new level. And then I realized, oh, I just got a deep tissue massage. I wonder if she's sensing that. So I mentioned that, and it seemed like the deep tissue massage I had gotten a few days prior was causing a rebound effect, not a release effect. So that's when we talked about how deep pressure can actually cause more harm than good. And I started seeing the neuromuscular therapist instead. So I actually want to add a little more detail here because I actually think it's a mix of both of those things, caretaker energy and the rebound from a deep tissue massage. Because, like I mentioned, when she asked me if I was a caretaker, at first I didn't know how to answer because I immediately thought of someone caring for a parent with dementia or a child with complex needs. And I thought, no, that's not me. But that question stuck with me. And later I realized she may have not meant caretaker in that extreme literal sense. It could have been more energetically. Because, like I mentioned, I do take care of people. I take care of my dogs, my husband, for our home. I track what everyone needs. I anticipate things. And I try to always stay regulated so others can feel stable and happy. And even if it's not this obvious, deep, martyr like sacrifice some caretakers have to give, there's still a very real energetic output that comes with being someone who always is trying to hold the emotional field for a family, a household, or a relationship. And I think a lot of women do this for their family. And I do think that is part of what she was feeling in my fascia. And that's part of my bracing and even after the massage. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a mix of caretaker and a little bit of rebound from the massage. And it reminded me that even if you're not a caretaker in the traditional sense, you might still be carrying that pattern in your body. So, this is something to think about for sure. But all of these sessions were part of my journey to unwind chronic bracing and inflammation. But what I've realized over time is that not all body work is created equal, and not all of it is helpful when your fascia is still holding trauma. So, I want to talk about deep tissue versus neuromuscular therapy. Deep tissue massage is often force based. It pushes deep into the muscle layers to break up the knots. It can be helpful in some cases, but if your nervous system is already dysregulated or your fascia is in a bracing pattern, it can actually make things worse. You might feel looser at first, but then the body rebounds. Sometimes it tightens even more, going into deeper protection. Neuromuscular therapy, on the other hand, works with the nervous system. It's slower, more precise, and focused on releasing specific trigger points and patterns of compensation. It's not just about pressure, it's about repatterning. And that's why I've fully shifted away from deep tissue. Neuromuscular sessions help my body feel safe enough to let go. And to me, the difference is day and night. So now let's talk about the deeper truths about massage. So, yes, massage can help break up distortion, but only if the nervous system and fascia are ready to release. It can mechanically hydrate and soften dried, stuck fascia, stimulate lymphatic and energetic flow, dislodge emotional memory stored in the tissues, bring awareness to areas of the body you've unconsciously avoided. But if it's done without intention or if the body doesn't feel safe, it can just press into a braced field. And that usually leads to rebound tension later. And intention is not optional. It is the key signal that says you can let go now, you are safe. When massage is paired with your clear presence, breath, and field awareness, it becomes a portal. You guide the fascia from the inside while the therapist supports from the outside. And sometimes when I'm getting the neuromuscular therapy and a part is kind of hurting me a little bit, I tell my body, I say in my head, you are safe, let it go. So now I want to mention why magnesium is part of my fascia ritual. Magnesium is a muscle and fascia relaxer, but it's more than that. It's a liquid light conductor, especially when used topically. It calms the nervous system, especially the sympathetic fight or flight loop. It helps fascia release calcium buildup, which causes stiffness. It regulates electrolyte balance so fascia can stay hydrated and conductive. Think of magnesium as the message that tells your body you can soften, you're safe, you don't have to brace anymore. I use magnesium glycinate internally and a topical magnesium spray directly on tight fascia zones to speed up unwinding. So, now I want to talk about the power of conscious stretching. Stretching isn't just a warm up, it's a repatterning tool. It brings oxygen, hydration, and awareness into stuck areas. It brings length to fascia, allowing spirals to reform. And it brings lymphatic movement and inflammation release. But not all stretching is equal. You want slow, breath based spiral stretching where you don't just lengthen, you listen. When held for 60 plus seconds with full breath and presence, a stretch can reorganize connective tissue. And when fascia opens, it opens not just physically, but emotionally. That's why stretching your hip might make you want to squeal, cry, laugh, or suddenly feel a little high. You're literally metabolizing stored memory. Trauma, emotion, and tension are exiting the body, and the fascia, once embraced distortion, is now becoming a vessel for coherence. Now, I want to mention why putting your feet up against your headboard or your wall is so helpful. It might not seem like much, but this posture is doing so much more than it looks like. It's not just relaxing, it's reorganizing your entire field. First, physically, it shifts you into parasympathetic mode, and that's your rest and repair state. The one where your body can finally stop racing and start healing. You're telling your fascia, you don't have to hold anymore, you're safe, you can let go now. It also supports lymphatic drainage. Fluid that's been pooling in your ankles, your knees, your hips, it starts to move. Your face might even look clearer or tighter afterward. From a fascia perspective, this position helps unlock spiral distortion. You're letting gravity do the work of unwrapping old holding patterns. Energetically, your body stops running the frequency of survival, and that's when white hole metabolism turns on. That's when the body says, okay, she's not just surviving anymore. Let's burn what we don't need. Let's sculpt the truth into form. Let's align with the true tone body. And that's the body that aligns with sacred geometry. Legs up on the headboard is a sacred pause, and it really helps your system remember who it really is. So I think this is a really powerful thing to add to your routine, and that's why I've been doing it. Something else came to mind that I've been doing that I haven't mentioned yet, and I think it pairs really well with fasting, and that is pu'er tea. I really like this tea regardless if I'm fasting or not, but I think it's especially helpful when you are in a fasting window. And there are specific reasons this tea actually supports your body's natural fat burning and detox processes. There is a fermented tea, which means it contains unique compounds that aren't found in regular black or green tea. That fermentation process gives it benefits that are especially helpful when you're in a fasted state. First, it supports liver function, which is huge when you're fasting because your liver is working hard to filter toxins and break down stored fat for fuel. Pu'er helps that process move more efficiently. Then, second, pu'er has been shown to lower blood lipids and improve fat metabolism. It can gently nudge your body into using fat stores for energy without overstimulating your nervous system the way coffee sometimes does. It's also low in caffeine, but still offers just enough stimulation to support mental clarity. That can be really helpful if you're fasting and hit a mid morning or early afternoon lull. Digestively, pu'er helps reduce bloating and supports gut motility, which can make your fasting window feel smoother and more comfortable. And unlike a lot of herbal teas, pu'er is very grounding. It has a rich, earthy taste and doesn't spike you into a high, which makes it especially good if you tend to feel lightheaded or floaty while fasting. So, if you're fasting and looking for something that supports fat burning, liver health, digestion, and clarity without throwing off your rhythm, pu'er is a solid go to. And I don't add sweeteners, it's really good as it is. I've been having a glass of water and a trace mineral supplement when I wake up, and then I have my pu'er tea. And there's a lot of different brands, but the one I've been having is from this company called Magic Hour. It's the butter pu'er tea. It has this soft little buttery flavor. And I was kind of worried at first about having tea on an empty stomach because in the past, when I've had certain green tea or even some black tea, I would feel nauseated if I drank it on an empty stomach. But I do not have that problem with pu'er tea for whatever reason. So I realized I listed some stuff I really like and then went into some good detail on some of it already, but I didn't talk about rebounding and mat Pilates. So I want to talk about that before we end. So both rebounding and mat Pilates are both low impact, fascia friendly, and incredibly effective, especially if you're in a phase where you're healing, sculpting, or repatterning your nervous system. So let's start with rebounding. That's basically bouncing gently on a mini trampoline. And while it might look like a simple movement, it's doing a lot under the surface. And one of the biggest benefits is that it supports your lymphatic system. Your lymph system is what helps your body flush toxins, inflammation, and waste, but it doesn't have its own pump. It relies on movement. And the gentle bouncing motion of rebounding creates a vertical pull that helps move lymph through your whole body. It's also amazing for fascia flow. That's the connective tissue system that wraps around your muscles and organs. Rebounding helps loosen stagnant areas, encourage hydration, and support elasticity in the fascia without any strain or force. Rebounding is especially helpful if you're fasting or in a fat burning phase because it encourages detox without putting stress on your joints or nervous system. Just 3 to 10 minutes a day is enough to create big impact. Now let's talk about mat Pilates. This is where you're doing controlled movements on the floor. No machines, just your body and your breath. What makes mat Pilates so powerful is that it builds deep core strength, not just surface level muscles. It targets the smaller stabilizing muscles around your spine, hips, and pelvis, things that support your posture, mobility, and balance. It also teaches body awareness and fascia control. When you move slowly and intentionally, you're not just working the muscles, you're reorganizing your entire movement pattern. Pilates is also incredibly supportive for the nervous system. Because it's breath led and low impact, it keeps you in a parasympathetic state while still building tone. That's especially important if you've had any history of burnout, overtraining, or tension related pain. So, while rebounding clears and moves energy, Pilates refines and anchors it. The two complement each other really well. One creates flow, the other builds structure. They are both great options if you're looking for movement that feels good, respects your nervous system, and actually works with your fascia, not against it. And actually, another thing I mentioned that I do but didn't go into details on why is walking. It's easy to overlook because it's so simple, but walking is one of the most supportive things you can do for your body, especially if you're in a healing or body transformation phase. First, walking is incredibly gentle on your nervous system. Unlike high intensity workouts that can spike cortisol, walking keeps you in a parasympathetic state, which is where fat burning, fascia repair, and hormonal regulation actually happen. It also helps regulate your blood sugar, especially if you walk after meals. That keeps your insulin levels more stable and supports your metabolism long term. And if you think about it, every step you take gently pumps the lymph system, especially around the hips, abdomen, and legs, areas where stagnant energy and density tend to accumulate. And because walking is a repetitive, rhythmic movement, it helps smooth the fascia while subtly training it to hold better tone and elasticity. You're literally reshaping how your body moves without overworking it. There's also a psychological benefit. Walking helps clear your mind, reset your emotional field, and pull you into the present moment. It's one of the easiest ways to regulate your field if you feel overstimulated, heavy, or stuck. And when you walk outside, especially in nature, you're also connecting to grounding frequencies, getting sunlight, and syncing your circadian rhythm. That has ripple effects across your whole hormonal and energetic system. It's not just filler movement, it's integration movement. It helps your body process everything you've been doing physically, emotionally, and energetically. I keep thinking of things I want to add before we end, but I want to talk for a minute about inputs, especially what we put into our bodies and why that matters so much when we're in this transformation phase of going from defense to design. I think sometimes people separate food from frequency, like food is just fuel and energy work is something else, but they're totally connected. The foods you choose and the energy you're in when you eat them can either support your fascia, your metabolism, and your nervous system, or they can stall your spiral and pull you back into old patterns. I'm in a phase right now where I want to feel sculpted, clear, and grounded. I'm burning fat, softening fascia, and stabilizing into my true tone body. So everything I eat is chosen with that intention in mind, not from obsession, but from alignment. And it actually feels really natural and intuitive. I'm not wanting other things. These are the things I'm truly wanting and sound so good. One of my favorite things lately has been really simple, but scrambled eggs cooked in Kerrygold butter. And I usually shred a little Parmesan and mix it in while it's cooking, and then add some sea salt. And then at the end, if I have any avocado, I'll slice up half of it and add that on top of it. And then I love the sourdough I get. It's homemade by not me, someone else. But it has thyme, rosemary, and garlic baked into it. I'll toast a piece and spread on more Kerrygold butter and then add a little sea salt. And it's simple, but it's so good and it's so satisfying. And like I said, some days I fast until dinner, sometimes I fast until 3. It really depends on how I'm feeling, but I just love this dish, so I'll have it whenever. But it's really protein rich, mineral rich, full of healthy fats, and it doesn't spike my blood sugar or make me crash. I feel light and energized after eating it, not weighed down. Another thing I've been loving is this yogurt I just found, and it's called Painterland Sisters Organic Skyr yogurt. Skyr is an Icelandic style yogurt that's thicker than Greek yogurt and higher in protein. Is cultured longer, which gives it a great tangy flavor and also makes it easier to digest. And I also love berries. It's summer right now, so I've been really into fresh berries. Raspberries and strawberries are my favorites. They're high in fiber and full of antioxidants. I've also been loving coconut water lately. I've been having it after I fast and after I eat in the evening when I feel like my body needs something mineral rich and hydrating. And it's sweet, so it really feels like a dessert after I eat. Coconut water is naturally high in potassium, magnesium, and electrolytes, which support fascial flow, lymphatic drainage, and muscle recovery. It's a great tool to rehydrate the tissue field without disrupting the fat burn spiral or spiking insulin. And it's actually a really helpful input when your body is releasing a lot, whether that's physical tension, emotional intensity, or just deeper cellular density. There's also a tuna salad I got from a local natural grocery store that I was fixated on, but they don't have it all the time. So that short period where they had it, I stocked up and bought a lot, and I had that a lot that week. But it had curry powder, mayo, parmesan, cheese, red onion, dill, parsley, sweet pickles, and agave. I would put that on a thin piece of toasted sourdough, but it was really good plain too. I also really love dates and pecans, and both of those have really great benefits as well. I just wanted to give some examples of things I really like that I think are healthy and beneficial. I'm not eating perfectly. That was just some examples, but I'm eating intentionally. I'm choosing foods that I know are good for my body and will support my metabolism and feel grounding without being heavy. And this is not about being obsessive or controlling the food. It's about staying aligned with how I want to feel clear, light, sculpted, regulated, and deeply nourished. And I think it's really good to think of food that way. You think of food as not just fuel, but just a part of your spiral. And also to think about food as energetic frequency as well. One thing I'm coming to realize is the food I reach for recently is never just food. It's a reflection of how I see myself in that moment. When I choose something grounding, mineral rich, or gently nourishing, it's because I'm already aligned with a version of me that feels stable and supported. When I grab food that's chaotic or disconnected or rushed, it usually mirrors something I haven't slowed down enough to notice. That's why I'm not rigid about what I eat, but I'm very intentional about the tone I'm in when I choose it. Food doesn't just change your blood sugar or your gut, it shifts your field. It becomes part of your fascia, it's absorbed into your frequency. I keep thinking of more stuff to add. I think this is the last item though. But I mentioned it earlier, and it's trace minerals. These are minerals your body only needs in small amounts, but they play a huge role in how everything functions. Your metabolism, hydration, nervous system, fascia, even your mood. So, we're talking about things like magnesium, potassium, zinc, copper, selenium, and iodine. The kind of minerals that don't always show up in our food anymore, especially if the soil it was grown in is depleted. When your trace minerals are low, you might feel tired even after resting. You might hold on to water or weight. Your fascia might feel dry or inflamed, and your nervous system just doesn't regulate as easily. But when your mineral balance is supported, even subtly, your whole system runs better. Your cells communicate more clearly, your tissues hold hydration better, your energetic field becomes more stable. Trace minerals are also essential for metabolic function. They help convert food into usable energy, regulate blood sugar, and support fat metabolism. So, if you're in a transformation phase, you really want to make sure your mineral levels are supported. I like to think of minerals as the conductor of your inner orchestra. They don't make the music, but they keep the rhythm clear and aligned. Without them, everything's just a little off. So, whether it's through mineral rich foods, clean sea salt, coconut water, or even trace mineral drops or supplements, this is one of the simplest ways to bring your body back into balance and keep your spiral moving forward. So, all of this is what it means to be the architect of your field. You stop reacting to what enters, you stop guarding and bracing, you start intentionally shaping a space where only coherence belongs. You're no longer a sponge. You're no longer fixing what never belonged to you. You're remembering the design beneath the distortion, the original nervous system template, fluid, trusting, precise. You're remembering the fascia map that spirals in sacred geometry, not stress. And you're remembering the hormonal rhythm that flows with light and nourishment, not fear. You don't have to micromanage your body anymore. You just have to stabilize your signal, hold the tone, breathe with the coherence that was always inside you. This isn't about transcending humanity or bypassing density. It's about reclaiming authorship, designing your nervous system to match your soul, building a body that sings your true tone, and curating a life that reflects the sacred architecture already inside you. Because here's the truth, you're not building a new self. You're reclaiming the one that was encoded before the distortion ever arrived. You're aligning with your true tone. You're aligning with your original divine design, your true morphogenic field, your true sacred geometry, the body that you naturally love and feel delighted by. And here's the magic. When you live that way, healing isn't something you chase. It reactivates itself. So thank you all for being here. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with friends, loved ones, family. I love you all, and I'll see you next week.